Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the show. I am back. I'm back and I'm live and I'm Mary Grace. And this is, it would help if I had volume. Let's try that again. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm Mary Grace. I'm back. I'm live. This is Real Talk with Mary Grace, and it is Monday, the 31st of January, 2022. Can you believe it? I hope everybody had a good weekend. I'm sure lots of people were just engaged with lots of different things this weekend. There was a lot going on in the sports world, the news world, the entertainment world, all kinds of stuff, the podcast world. And I'm here to give you some commentary on some of this. I'm very glad to see all of you. Please, as you're coming in, tag people that you know, share this. It really helps when you share it into groups, especially on the socialist media platforms, because that is where they censor us. I am on Clout Hub channel 111, and I'm also on Twitter, Real Mary Grace 1, and I'm on YouTube and Facebook, Mary Grace Media. Don't forget to follow me on Telegram as well. That Telegram channel is right here. Where did it go? Okay, it's on the screen, so you can take a look. You can screenshot it. It is Mary Grace Media Official. And I recommend you follow that channel because I do share a lot of content to that channel. I am very happy to see everybody today. Oh, there's Christy. Hold on a second. Let's see. Okay, I'm live. I'm live right now. I think, there you are. Okay. Perfect. Good. All right. Christy, you just got an upgrade. You're now a moderator. Okay. So it's good to see everybody. I hope you guys had a good weekend. I have such a long list of things to talk about today. I don't know if I'm going to get through it. I may go a little bit long because there's just been so much on my mind. I was I've been listening to podcasts. I've been listening to the president. I've just been following the truckers rally, really thinking about, what would Jesus do? All kinds of things. So I hope that you guys will stick with me. We're going to have a good hour or plus. And for those of you who like to watch Elijah streams immediately following, I totally understand if you bail on the end of my show. If I go over, just come back and watch the end so that you can finish the show. All right, where should I even start? There's so much going on. And can you believe what a January it's been? A friend of mine told me the other day, she goes, January is like the Monday of the year. And I haven't usually experienced that. I've usually had like momentum in January, but I don't know about you guys, but this January has been very challenging for me. And it's been very challenging in a lot of ways. I know that there's been a lot of good things that have happened just, in the realm of the battles that we're fighting. I feel like there's also been a lot of resistance. Maybe it was just some lingering insanity from 2021. Maybe it's just because we got, we went through COVID. I had an injury that I was dealing with. I had this bad cold. There's just a lot, and like emotionally, I think the weight of everything that has been happening, was sort of bubbling to the surface for me, because I typically tend to just soldier on. A lot of us do. And sometimes it's like I'm like a percolator and everything just percolates, and I have to have a good cry and I have to just deal with it. And so I missed the show on Thursday because I was just dealing with not only that, I was dealing with a situation that sort of caused the whole thing to percolate. And I don't really want to talk about it on the show, but it's something that happened with somebody in my family. And I would just really appreciate your prayers because what happened is sort of symptomatic of some other issues that have been going on for a long time. And don't worry, it's not my it's not my it's not my dad, it's not my sister, it's not my immediate family, but family members that, you know, I would consider very close. So I would just really appreciate your prayers on that. If I start talking about it, I'll cry. So I'm not going to do that on the show. However, just keep us in your prayers, and just pray that, you know, there's some resolution and some uh, I don't know. I don't know even what to ask you to pray. Just ask Holy Spirit to guide you, uh, because there's a lot of, you know, some of us in our family feel incredibly in the dark about the situation, and it probably shouldn't be that way. So that's what I'm going to say about that. And we want like this veil to be lifted, in our family, from things that have been uh, just kind of not dealt with, you know? I think every family has things like that. And, you know, and we grow at different rates, right? We think that we're there, and then challenges come, and some of us everybody deals with challenges in different ways. Some people really want to grow. Some people actually think they're growing, but they're not. Some people want to just pretend things aren't happening. There's a lot of avoidance, and that's sort of what's happening in our family. There's a lot of avoidance, and, you know, people are just pretending that certain problems just don't exist, you know, and so it results in, you know, anytime anybody isolates, the people that really love them can't actually help them. And so it's pretty hurtful when you have somebody that you really love and you can't actually help them because you don't even really know what's going on. So that's just kind of a, you know, little tip of the iceberg explanation of what is going on, you know, in our family. So I appreciate all of your prayers. I do, thank you so much for that. And hopefully I will have a good report about that very soon. Speaking of prayers, a lot of you guys have been praying for Michelle, who has been one of my moderators, here in since very early on in my podcasting. And she is a good friend, and her husband was in the hospital. He went into the hospital, and he had to have he had blockages, and he had to have bypass surgery. So they made it through the weekend. He got out of ICU last night, and he has to go into cardiac rehab there at the hospital. And of course, you know, that's challenging in a normal time. But because of everything that's going on with COVID, it's been even more challenging. And it's very interesting because, you know, from the very beginning of his admission to the hospital, actually, even before he was admitted, they were pushing and pushing and pushing for a COVID test. And she and her husband managed to avoid it for the most part. But then when they were going to do the procedure, the catheterization, like he got admitted without a COVID test, and then they were going to do the catheterization to check his arteries, and they said, "Oh, you have to have the test." And they gave them all kinds of reasons, you know, that they had to have it. And eventually, it was very interesting because, you know, she was sitting there with him, and she looked at her husband. She goes, "Honey, they have to get their COVID money, so that's why they want to do the test. But you and I both know that if you're positive, we're not going to let them take you away and isolate you on a COVID ward. I'm going to take you home, and I'm going to treat you, and we're going to get the treatment that you really need." And he looked at her and he said, "I know that that's what you'll do, honey." So they submitted to the test. But it was very interesting because it was like, she said they could almost see the hospital staff, kind of the body language was like, finally we have somebody that's fighting back, somebody who gets it, somebody who knows what's going on. Now, you know, the nurses and the staff, like they can't really talk about it, but they know it's a big scam. And for the most part, people come in and they submit, and they don't push back, and they don't ask questions, and then they get, you know, pulled into the system. And a lot of these nurses and doctors, now you can criticize them and say, well, they should come forward, whatever. For some reason, they're not all of them. But you know, but they know it's all just a big scam. And so Michelle and her husband, I give them so much credit because they did not allow themselves to be bullied. And you're thinking to yourself, well, they submitted to the test. However, um, it was negative, and she told the doctor, she goes, if he comes back positive, you might as well give him a pregnancy test because he has as much a chance of being pregnant as he does of having COVID. And he has zero symptoms. And it was kind of crazy because they were sort of trying to like manufacture symptoms. They brought him like a cough pill later that night, and they tried to tell her that the doctor had seen like a shadow on his lung of x-ray and that he might have pneumonia. And she was like, he doesn't have pneumonia, he doesn't have a cough, he was coughing because his drink went down the wrong way. And it's kind of cool because everything that we've learned is actually being played out in her situation, and she has the tools and the ammunition to fight it, which is pretty awesome. And so for those people that have really suffered, that have kind of paved the way, and who weren't so fortunate to have the benefit of understanding exactly what was happening, um, it's thank you to those people who have taken the slings and arrows and who have been bold enough and brave enough to speak out about what is going on, because now we have people who are in this situation who are actually able to fight back, and they're armed with the information. And so they and then they came back the next day before the surgery and tried to do another test. And it was funny because the nurse was on the phone with the doctor, and the nurse came in the room, and she's told the doctor, she goes, I'm keeping you on the phone with me because I want you to be part of this conversation. Because the nurse knew that it was all BS. And so Michelle and her husband pushed back. And Michelle finally just said, this is not a simple test. It's very invasive. I can tell it hurts him when you do it. And there's no reason for it. If you need to wear extra PPE out of caution, then wear it. But don't put my husband through a needless test. You're not testing him for other things that he doesn't have symptoms for. So why are you testing him for COVID? And so the doctor actually relented. And then the nurse leaned in after that when the doctor was off the phone, and she goes, you can blame it on Fauci. And so like they know what's going on, and the patients are being used as pawns, and the nursing staff, even the doctors, because this is all coming down from admin. And one of the things that they kept telling her was, well, this is our policy. And they were trying to get them to submit to the testing before they let him sign the responsible party form, like the POA form. And they kept delaying, and they came in with the test the first time, and the nurse just tried to force the test on him. And Michelle said, well, we already told you he was going to take the test, but we need that form. We need the POA form, and we need to sign that before anything else happens here. And the nurse kept pushing, and he goes, well, this is procedure. It's policy. And she said, well, you have your policies and procedures, and we have our policies and procedures. And our procedure is that we're going to sign this paper before you do anything else. And so she won that round too. And so what I'm saying here is that it's hard. It's not easy. She has to be at the hospital, as much as she can to make sure that they know that she's on top of it. And but however, the people who went before her, they actually thank you to the people who came back and told your stories. That's really, really helpful and important. And speaking of hospitals, I did want to tell you guys, this is something just to know in general. and this was true before COVID, and it's even more exacerbated now. And that is when you have a loved one in the hospital, they absolutely need an advocate. They need to have a caring relative or friend that has been signed off to receive information and to communicate with the medical staff. And then that person and you, the patient, or the person that is the advocate or the responsible party, it is critically important that any vital information be communicated at every shift. What do I mean by that? I mean that if you go in on a Monday and there's a group of nurses there and they're taking care of your loved one, it is important that you tell them, my loved one has an advance directive. My loved one has a DNR. My loved one is hearing impaired. My loved one has diabetes. My loved one is not signing anything without consulting me. Why do you have to tell them at every shift? You have to tell them at every shift, and ideally you tell the charge nurse. You have to tell them at every shift because even though they have electronic records, even though the information is supposed to pass, from caregiver to caregiver, I can tell you 100% for sure that it doesn't. I have been in so many situations where the nursing staff have walked into the room, or the therapist, or the lunch person, whoever it is, where they walk into the room and this patient is like a blank slate to them. They have no idea what is going on with the patient. They should. They're supposed to. In the old days, when the charts were outside of the room, they were supposed to flip through that before they even walked into the room. But I can assure you that they don't. I used to be, I was a caregiver responsible party for a friend who was blind, and she was brittle diabetic. I can't tell you how many times people walked into that room, doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, everybody, specialists walked into that room and had no idea even that she was blind. And I had to tell them. So this is important because they're not passing on that information. And, either it's just, maybe it's laziness. Usually it's lack of time, especially RNs. They have so much admin work that they have to take care of that their actual patient contact isn't nearly what it used to be. And it's been exasperated probably 100-fold by COVID, especially now that they've fired their staff because they're short staffed. And so that is one of the reasons that there has to be somebody with the patient as much as possible. I'm not talking about like a 10-minute visit once a day. I'm talking about like rearrange your life to where you're in that room most of the time. And that you're there early in the morning when the doctors come and do rounds. You're there for the afternoon rounds. That's what I'm talking about. Because the other thing is that that I've noticed is that they send people in to get them to sign all kinds of paperwork. And so the other thing is that you really need to make sure your loved one is very clear on saying, I need to discuss this with my mother, my spouse, my sister, whoever is the other responsible party. Make sure that the person who's in the hospital is constantly telling them that. Because, like right now, her husband is coming off of anesthesia and he thinks he's in a different state, like literally, physically. And they're coming in there trying to get him to sign stuff. And she had to put her foot down and say, no, he is not capable. And until the doctor signs off that he is fully 100% has the mental capacity to sign, he will not sign another thing. So just keep that in mind. This is important. I feel the need to tell you. I don't know, maybe somebody has a situation coming up, or I just assume that people understand how it works and how to navigate all this because I've done it so many times. But, it's been very instructional talking to Michelle through the weekend because the only time she's ever been around the hospital is when she had her babies. So I think that's most people fall into that category as opposed to my category, which is that I probably spent way more time in hospitals than anybody who's not a patient or a nurse or doctor should. So so that's just a disclaimer. Hopefully that'll help you guys. Let me look at your comments here for just a minute. And thank you for praying for Michelle. Uh, um, Christy says, I told my sister to read all the fine print when she goes in for surgery. I heard they can jabberwocky you while under sedation. Yeah, I think that's something that they discussed as well and said absolutely not. Uh, um, Okay, Edme says, thank you for your information. I don't often go to hospitals, so your information is helpful. Yeah, it's just, it's like the wild, wild west in there, And so, you really need to have, if you're in the hospital or if somebody that you love is in the hospital, they have to have like a body there, an extra pair of eyes and ears to see, to understand and to communicate, and it's a game changer with regard to how they treat your loved one. I can't emphasize that enough. When they know that there is somebody there asking questions and checking the information and taking stock of everything they do, it changes everything. It changes the whole relationship. Now, you want to be respectful. You want to be, you know, you don't want to be confrontational unless it gets to a situation where you really are forced to. What I say is that you want to be pleasantly persistent. You have every right, you have 100% right to ask, what is this medication for? What is this treatment for? What are the alternatives? What is the long term prognosis if I do this versus if I don't? Those kinds of things. That is the patient's right to do that. And people have gotten so complacent and they've gotten so used to just being a product of the medical industrial complex, that they come back from a doctor visit and say, well, the doctor says I have to do this and this and this, and they don't even ask the questions. And one of the things that I have been doing with my dad is taking him to the VA, and we're starting to review prescriptions that he's been on. He's been on some prescriptions for years, and in some cases they're no longer warranted, and in some cases he can actually achieve a better, if not similar, result with nutraceuticals that are without pharmaceuticals. And so this is something that I think that everybody needs to become more aware of, because in case you haven't noticed, the hospital system, the medical industrial complex is a massive, massive business. It is a for-profit business, and they are going to make decisions that increase their bottom line. All right. We've seen that. I mean, the whole government funding of COVID and the government financing of it should make you aware of that. It's just like the same thing that's happening with higher education. Universities have gotten extraordinarily expensive because the federal government has guaranteed the loans. And that's exactly what's happening here. This hospital was doing their damnedest to try and turn Chris, Michelle's husband, into a COVID patient. They were trying to manufacture a COVID patient. And when they realized that Chris and Michelle were on to them, they stopped. And so this is really critically important to understand that as a patient in a system, in a healthcare system, you are a commodity. You're a paycheck. You are a source of revenue. Never ever forget that. All right. If you and I'm not saying that doctors shouldn't charge for their services. Don't hear that from what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that when you're in a situation um, where it becomes pretty, let's say that you go in and you have really good insurance, um, you can bet they're going to be looking at your insurance and they're going to be using that as part of their basis for recommending certain procedures and medications and care. I hate to say that, but it's true. You are a potential paycheck for any hospital system. Okay, now the point of this is that you have to take your own health. You have to take responsibility for that, and it can be very scary. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of uncharted territory, and because of that, the people that run these systems, they know that. I mean, that's how they got people to comply with all the COVID stuff, is that they just threw all the unknowns and said, we've got the experts, we know best. So just keep that in mind. And that brings me to my next topic, which is I want to talk about President Trump, and I want to talk about the political landscape that we find ourselves in. Now, the chat just went super quiet. Maybe it's because you guys are just listening. I don't know. But if you're here, just give me a thumbs up. Give me a little bit of a comment about, if that's been your experience. Are you taking more responsibility for your own health now than you were 2 years ago? Are you more aware of what's been happening? Are you a more savvy consumer of healthcare now that you understand a lot more of what's going on? Okay, next topic. So President Trump has done a couple of rallies. He was in Arizona last weekend, and then this past weekend he was in Texas. And he drew these massive, massive crowds out in the middle of like nowhere. And I think the one in Texas was, they said, the biggest event of its kind ever in the state. And he had all these people there, and the same in Arizona. I think it was just very, very massive. And so so I think that's pretty awesome, and I think it's extra awesome that on the day that little Justin Trudeau went into hiding because he's so scared of the truckers, the people that he's supposed to represent. He went into hiding. I think he's out at his like surf resort on Vancouver Island. I think that's very interesting that on the same day that happened, President Trump was walking into a rally full of like 50,000 people, just putting himself out there. And I mean, the juxtaposition couldn't be more obvious. If you are a man of the people, if the people love you, you have nothing to fear. And President Trump is not afraid of his constituents because we love him. Justin Trudeau, on the other hand, knows that if he walked down the street anywhere near Parliament, or he walked past any of these trucks, and the people, Delia said it was 80,000. Wow. Okay. So Trudeau knows that it's just like Q said, they will no longer be able to walk down the street. There will come a day when they will not be able to walk down the street. And that is exactly what we're seeing right now. Justin literally fled to the other side of the country, to an island, and is hiding away. Now, somebody put something on TikTok with the address of where he supposedly is. And they said, wouldn't it be ashamed if everybody sort of honked their horn in the vicinity of little Justin's hideout? I think that would be very interesting. But it's just very it's very interesting, isn't it? That um, I mean, it speaks for itself, right? If Justin Trudeau actually cared about the people of Canada, he wouldn't be afraid to walk among the crowd of people who have grievances with policies that he has made, basically dictatorial policies. But, he knows, and he knows that they know. And I was watching a video put up by Pastor Artur Petrowski. He's the pastor who was arrested a couple of times in Canada for having church. You may remember him because he put up videos of the police coming and trying to shut him down, and he was calling them Nazis. So he came out of Poland, and he was part of the solidarity movement in Poland, and he gave out a pretty stark warning today, or I don't know when it was, this weekend, to the politicians and to the police. He said, this reminds me of when I was in Poland, and the police actually were running from the protesters, from the people, because there are more of us than there are of them. And that's interesting because that's something that President Trump said in his rally the other day. And we've also seen that on George News, and I think it's actually on one of the Q posts. I may be mistaken about that, but I think it is. And so Pastor Artur was saying, he issued a stark warning to these people who are taking part in this as law enforcement and politicians. And he said, the people are coming for you. He said, I'm not talking about violence. I'm talking about that we're taking over the systems that you have used against the people. And believe me, trust me, you will be caught in the wheels of justice. And this is something that that I think is really important to understand. We don't. Pawlowski is this last name. I thought it was Petrowski. Pawlowski. We don't. We're not. No, nobody's advocating for violence. Nobody's advocating for vigilantism. But the people have had enough. The people have had enough, and this is where there's a precipice, and that's something Q talked about. Only at the precipice will the people begin to see. And I think that we're there. um, and some people aren't yet, but I've talked about this before. It's a tipping point. It's a tipping point, and I think that uh, it's really important that if somebody is in a position of power, if you or somebody that is law enforcement, and you've been enforcing these unconstitutional mandates and saying, "Oh, I'm just doing my job." If you're in healthcare and you have ushered people to their death, knowing that it was wrong, if you're in politics and you have sat by and watched while these edicts were passed down and while these drugs were funded, and you, in the meantime, had you and your family treated by Dr. Corey with ivermectin, this is who he's talking about. And, he's issuing a warning. He's saying, it's time to come clean. It is time to make a decision. It's decision time. Are you for the people or are you for the tyrants? There's no middle ground. And that is something that Trump has been messaging. Again, not a violent message. It is a message of the people taking back the power and doing it through legal means. And that means taking back the legal avenues as well. One of the things that President Trump is emphasizing, he said this in his rally, I think both times. He said, it's time to get to work. And so he's talking to we the people. And I think that, it's pretty obvious over the last year since we saw the election stolen that that the people have been asleep at the wheel. that people have not been paying attention. They haven't been at the school board meetings. They haven't been at the supervisor meetings. They haven't been at the smaller elections. They haven't participated in the primaries. They haven't understood how the precinct committee positions work. They haven't really cared or noticed when election laws were changed in the middle of the night. They haven't really noticed or cared that everything was going to mail in ballots or anything like that. The people just haven't been involved. And that has undergone a major change over the last year. And for those of you who are still sad that President Trump didn't take the oath of office on January 20th, 2021, we're all very sad about that. However, think about what you've learned. Think about what has changed. Think about what you've seen happening in the school boards with the action that people have taken. It's amazing. Like it's tremendous. And there's things that you didn't even know were a thing. You didn't know most of this stuff. I mean, there's so many categories I can talk about. You didn't know about the medical industrial complex. You didn't know about the election cheating. You didn't know about the child trafficking. You didn't know about the uniparty and how, the Republican Party is just like 10 times worse than the Democrats because they'll just sit there and lie to your face. At least the Democrats tell you what they're doing and they do it. The Republicans tell you they're going to do something, they do the opposite and stab you in the back. And so, that is what we've seen that. Our eyes have been open. People didn't understand even how our Constitution works. There's still people out there that think that a mandate is a law. It's not a law. It's just like when you go in the airport and they say federal law requires that you put a face diaper on your face the whole time you're in the airport and in the plane. It's actually not federal law. That's a big fat lie. It's a mandate. It's a recommendation by the CDC, and they decided to call it a law. But people are waking up to that. And so, President Trump is telling the people that it's time to get to work. Now, the interesting thing about this is a lot of people have already gotten to work. But in the past 2 weeks, President Trump's position, his stance has changed dramatically. He came out on the offense. I don't know if you guys noticed that. He came out on the offense, and he has told people in no uncertain terms, get to work. And he's also telling the deep state, he's also telling the deep state and all of these criminals, we're coming for you. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. We're no longer the party of apologies and appeasement. We are the party of leading from the front and being aggressive and on the offense. And, he put them on notice the other day. I'm going to read you this quote that he said. I mean, like he's done, and he's telling you we're done. This is what he said. He said, we have to tell this band of hypocrites, tyrants, and racists that we're done with having them control our lives, mess with our children, and close our businesses. We're moving on from COVID, whether they like it or not. We're moving on. So there's something very interesting about that statement. He's been calling them liars for a long time, right? He's been calling the press the enemy of the people. And he said something very interesting in this statement. He said, hypocrites, tyrants, and racists. Up until this point, I think it's significant that he uses the word, that he comes out and calls them racists. Up until this point, Republicans have been on the defensive. We've been, fighting from back on our heels. And we've been trying to defend and say, no, you don't understand. It's the Democrats that are the racists. And we've been trying to explain away the truth and to reason with people. President Trump came out swinging. this weekend. He came out swinging and said, these people are flat out racist, and it's time to tell them to go pound sand. And that is a very strong message because what he's telling you is that MAGA Nation is a completely different entity from the mealy mouthed, weak kneed, apologetic, defensive Republican Party of the past. It is incredibly significant that he's saying this. And I want people to understand the significance. I want you to understand the gravity of what he's doing here. He's telling you it is time to work, and it's time to fight, and it's time to say enough is enough. Just like Michelle did in the hospital. We know what you're doing. We see it. We understand. We're not playing your game. And that is what he's saying. And, I was thinking about this because people have been, very passive for quite some time here. And I was thinking about, the Bible. I was thinking about Jesus and the disciples. And, when Jesus came on the scene, it was a pretty bad situation. The Romans were in power, and they were really wreaking havoc. They weren't really friendly to the Jews, to say the least. But they had figured out one thing, and that was discipleship. The thing that the Roman Empire did that was really well, and this is how they were able to conquer and get such a foothold in so much of the world, the known world at that time, is that they mastered the art of discipleship. I don't know if you know that. They would go into an area, and they would not just occupy, but they would disciple the population, and that meant that they would train up the children. They took over what Lance Wallnau and Johnny Enlow refer to as the Seven Mountains: government, religion, education, the arts. I'm missing a bunch of them, but all of it. They took it all over, and they trained people up in their methods. And I think it's very interesting because, the reason that we are really, really stuck and that we're in danger of losing our country is that we've actually allowed the Marxist agenda to take over, and the leftists have been discipling our people, our civilization, for years now. We've allowed our children to be disciples of dangerous gender ideology. We've allowed our churches to be discipled in the arts of social justice. We have allowed all of the Seven Mountains to be taken over, and the Christians, in the name of tolerance and whatever other nonsense, have actually become disciples of the movement that is now on the verge of taking over all of civilization. And the reason that we've allowed that is because of the passivity that has pervaded Christian worldview and theology, which is God is in control. And it's a very passive, non-action oriented stance. And because of that, it's been very, very easy for all of Western Christendom to be discipled by into being like basically functional atheists, and in many cases even taking the step to go over into Marxism. And if you don't believe that, look at how many churches look at how many pastors have told their congregations that they have to pray for this president and honor him because he took the oath of office. That's a big fat lie. But they are taking the road of appeasement because they've been discipled by people who have manipulated them into thinking that's actually what you're supposed to do. Even when something is stolen, that you're supposed to give honor to the thief. That's not how it works. And so Jesus himself, when Jesus came, the disciples, were waiting for him to storm into the palace and take over for Caesar and be crowned the physical king, right? They had that sort of passivity going too. They were like, "Thank God somebody's here to fix this," and what he told them was very interesting. He didn't say, "Okay, great guys, watch this. I'm going to go storm the castle. Uh, the the emperor is finished," right? He didn't say that. He said, "You are going to go into all the world and make disciples of all nations." And I think that one of the biggest mistakes that Christians made, um, one of the one of the biggest mistakes that we've made is into thinking that making disciples means that making converts, just going around and preaching and saying, repent and be saved, and repent of your sins and be a Christian and avoid going to hell. It was like the church took his message um, as something completely different than it was. It was like, all these people that were going around evangelizing, and I'm not saying that conversion is a bad thing, but it basically became like a big life insurance sales pitch, right? Like, save yourself from going to hell. Whoo, dodge that bullet. That's not what discipling is. Discipleship is actually teaching people to walk the kingdom walk and to bring the kingdom of God into this earth, because that's what Jesus said. He said, "I came to bring the kingdom." Do you remember that? And so if were going to go and make disciples, that meant that they're supposed to go and make people who understand what it means when you say, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." Because, the communists and the Marxists certainly understand that concept. They understand the concept of discipleship so well that they've infiltrated all of your schools and universities and have turned your children into disciples. And so, this is important. This is a really important thing to understand. And so, am I saying to become a disciple of Trump? Absolutely not. What I'm saying is that if you understand the concept of occupying all of the mountains of society and taking ownership in those places, uh, which is what I hear Trump telling you to do. He's not talking about just getting involved politically. He's talking about taking back your children's education. He's talking about taking back the arts, the entertainment. Why do you think he bought a media company? Why do you think Truth Social and DWAC exists? Think about that. So, and I think it's really interesting because I think God had to use somebody who had tremendous experience in many of those mountains to be able to guide the people to taking those mountains back. Think about it. He's been in the entertainment industry. He's been in the business industry. He's been in communication, the arts. Now that he's had a number of children. His wife Melania has made him aware of the education part of things. I'm sure his other children have too. But you get what I'm saying. This is a man who has seen so many different realms. And it's to me, it's not surprising that God chose him to activate the people and to get the people to wake up and understand what it is to take back our country, what it is to stand on the side of freedom. It's not just waving a flag and saying, "Rah, rah, rah, freedom." He said, it's time to get to work. It's time to get to work. Roll up your sleeves, get to work, take back this country, go out. It's a lot. It's just like what Jesus said. Go into the world and make disciples, right? Again, don't conflate the two. I'm not calling Trump Jesus. I'm telling you that what Jesus was saying is it has bearing um, right now on what we're hearing from the leaders that we respect, which is take the hill and take back these institutions that have been occupied by the enemy. That's what we're talking about. Now, I want to look at your comments here. Oh, Shay said something interesting. She said, the church we were going to the day after the election put a big picture of Brandon on the screen for us to pray for him. I left right in the middle and have not been back to that church. There you go. That's how to vote with your feet. Um, yeah. So, teaching people how to follow Jesus. Yeah. He absolutely knows the political mountain. That's for sure. Oh, Marvin said something interesting on the on YouTube. He said at the Conroe, Texas event, I spoke to local law enforcement. They said it was over 150,000. Not all were inside the event. Some tailgated outside, like me, with a sound system and big screens. Okay, so he had the big screens out. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, that's just crazy, isn't it? Uh, um, the parents and kids on Long Island are taking a stand against the mandates. That's awesome. Oh, thank you, SoCal Gal. Everybody give Mary Grace a thumbs up. Yes, this is a good time to remind you. If you're new to my channel, even if you're not, please do a thumbs up, do a heart, whatever it is you can do on the channel that you're on. Make sure that people can see that. It definitely helps with the algorithm. And then if you come back to watch the replay, please leave a comment in the replay. Tell us your thoughts on the things that we've been discussing here. What are your thoughts about this? Is it a type of discipleship to take back these mountains? Have Christians been asleep at the wheel? Why are we in this situation? What are you personally doing about it? Leave us a comment. Leave a comment. I do read the comments in as much as I can see them. Sometimes they get hidden, but it does make a difference when you leave comments. So I do appreciate that. And please make sure you're following the channel that you're watching on, and make sure that you're following my Clout Hub channel 111 and my profile on Clout Hub, which is Mary Grace Media. And then I'm also on Getter under just Mary Grace. And so make sure you're following me over there as well. If I lose touch with everybody, if I get taken down from any platform, you can go to my Telegram and find me there. And that is right here. It's Mary Grace Media Official. I just put it on the screen again. So that's a good time to take a break and let you know where you can find me. Okay, let me go back to the chat here. All right. So, thank you guys for sharing this. I really do appreciate it. Maybe now that you're more than halfway through and you're trying to figure out if you should share it, now you're deciding, oh, okay, good. I think I will share this. Okay. Christy said, a church in Texas had an electronic sign that said masks are mandatory. Yes, they spelled it wrong. Manditory. Nice. Romans 13 has been used to lead Christians to just accept whatever tyrants dish out, abuse of obedience. There you go. Boom. It's one of the biggest manipulations that's ever happened to the church and to the West. And I've seen this in my travels. I've seen how people who are really good at manipulating have taken advantage of the that have taken advantage of the kindness and the way that Christians are taught just to be kind and to accept everything. It's people know that. I mean, I'm telling you, I've traveled the world, and the the mindset of Christians, especially from the U.S., from Canada, and places like that, has been used. People have been taken. We've been taken advantage of because they know that we're generally friendly and kind and forgiving and accepting, and that's how it's been so easy for them to manipulate people into saying, "Oh, do this for the greater good." And I think this is I think this is really interesting. So, speaking of Canada, it's very interesting. I saw this meme. So the Canadians, the way that you know that things are really bad is when the Canadians get like really mad, and because Canadians are known for being fairly peace loving. They haven't been entirely neutral in wars, but they're not really that aggressive. They're just sort of easygoing, go along to get along, that kind of thing. And it's a much smaller population than the U.S. People aren't really like storming their borders to get into Canada. For one thing, it's cold. I mean, they have the northern lights and all, but it's like really close to the Arctic Circle. So, I mean, I went to Canada once, and it was in August, July or August, and it was intentionally, that's when I went because I didn't want to be cold. I still was cold, but I wasn't as cold as if I went like this time of year, right? There's a reason that people wear fur, and it's called Canada. But going back to just their overall attitude about things. They're very peace loving, and so I think that this is such a funny meme. I'm going to let you read it. Okay, the title of this is "When Canadians Absolutely Lose Their You Know What," and look at the picture. It's just so funny. Can you guys see it? Look at the flag. Look at the goose. Please leave me alone. I just think that's the funniest meme. It's so apropos of Canadians. I mean, so when a bunch of truck drivers descend on the Capitol that they've had enough, right? Absolutely enough. And so it's like when Canadians start to march and rally and have a convoy, then it's over. That's the way I see it. Because Americans, I mean, we've been having rallies and things like that, a lot. And I'm not in any way discounting what I saw on what's been happening in Europe and in Australia. I mean, I don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, like, those people have been out, like the French. The French have been marching for like 2 years, the yellow vests, or longer than that. And but Canadians are just polite. I mean, when I was traveling in Europe, the Canadians were the ones that would always sit around and share their food. I was on a ferry one time going from Greece to Turkey, and and everybody's sitting up on the deck, and the Canadians pull out their Nutella and they're passing it around. Right? They're just nice people and non-confrontational. And so when the Canadians start when the Canadians get on the move, it's over. And I'm pretty sure Justin knows that. I'm pretty sure these globalists know that. I don't think it's an accident that the people that Switzerland has lifted their mandates, that the UK is lifting the vax mandate for the healthcare workers. They know. They're like, holy cow! If the Canadians are on the move, we're about to be in big trouble here. That's my take on it. All right. So, one thing I wanted to say about the truckers is please pray for the truckers, the convoys, because I've been seeing some chatter. Somebody shared something earlier about how they're trying to. There's chatter about some false flags being set up. And the one that I read about was just horrible. They were going to set up, you know what a false flag is? A false flag is an incident that is basically staged to look like a real tragedy. And it doesn't mean that it's done to divert attention and to set a narrative. It doesn't mean that the tragedy didn't happen. So the events themselves are real. The pretense behind it is fake. You understand? And so, like, what happened on January 6th, that was a false flag because it was infiltrated by feds who started the violence and made it look like peaceful patriots turned violent. And so what I think is happening in Canada now is that there are factions that are trying to set up and implement false flag events, one or more, to make this look like a violent situation, sort of a repeat of January 6th. And so please continue to pray about to pray for these truckers and really just send forth angelic protection over them, and even send angels into the midst of the people that are planning these false flags, that they would be thwarted, that their efforts would be thwarted, that they would have a crisis of conscience, that they wouldn't carry it through. And because this is really important, we don't want to end up with a situation like what happened in DC. And what I read, the one that I read, was that they were going to stage it to where one of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police horses was going to get run over by a trucker and killed. And it was going to be this international incident. And then, there would be an investigation and people would be, imagine having something like that happen and pinning it all on these violent truckers. So that's the kind of thing that these people do. They're willing to sacrifice their own. They're willing to sacrifice, even a beautiful animal like that, in order to maintain their agenda. And so we really need to pray against this. And one of the things that I've seen that I think is very interesting, that shows you that they're actually losing the narrative, besides the fact that they're lifting these mandates and Justin is on the run. One of the things they're doing that I think is very interesting is how the media just lies about stuff, that enemy of the people, fake news. They come and, they just lie about stuff, and, they'll report on something, but they report on it falsely. Well, what they've been doing lately is they've actually just been reporting stories that hadn't even happened yet. And they're so desperate to take over the news cycle that they're just pushing out stories before they even happened. That's what they did with Justice Breyer, right? It was like Justice Breyer announces his retirement, and he's like, wait, what? I didn't do that, right? And then they did the same thing with Tom Brady. Right? They're like, Tom Brady's retiring. He's like, who, what? And so I think it's very interesting that they're not even going to, they're not even trying anymore. They're not even waiting for a story to break to report falsely about it. They're just like telling a story that may or may not be true. They're basically just reporting rumors. Yeah, I mean, it's like, okay, that's really desperate. I'm looking at one of your comments here. Guys, Barley George is at the door. He's trying to get in. You're gonna have to wait, Barley. Somebody said, okay, I heard they're going to blame them for the food shortages. Well, here's the thing. We've already been having food shortages before the convoy, and the people that's going to be shut down pretty quickly, because the people on social media that are trying to minimize this are saying, well, big deal. It's not going to hurt anything. This is a fringe group because 90% of the truckers are vaxxed. And so why would they even care? This is not going to have any impact. And, that's the thing about the internet. You can just put it right back in their face and say, you already said this wasn't going to have an impact. So why are you turning around now and blaming your manufactured crisis and food shortage on these people who are standing up for freedom? That's not going to work. So if anybody comes at you and says these truckers are responsible for the shortage, tell them A, it was already happening before this, and B, if 90% of the truckers are vaxxed and they can move freely about across the borders, how could these fringe group have an impact on the supply? Tell me that. How does the supply chain get affected by a fringe minority? Because you can't have it both ways. It's either a fringe minority that is out there just, blowing smoke and complaining about something that's a non-issue, or it is a group of people who have a valid point and deserve to be heard. It can't be both. Yeah, you have to throw it right back in their faces. I mean, so that's what we're learning. We're learning to fight and to be on the offense. And, the other thing, I want to go back to President Trump for just a minute, and that is, that President Trump is revealing the traitors for all of their worth. And one of the things that I think people don't always understand or get about President Trump is that the things that he doesn't say are just as important as the things that he does say. And I'll give you an example. The other night at the rally, he was in Texas, and he was naming a bunch of people that were there, right? He was calling them by name: Governor Abbott, Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General. Like, he was acknowledging people from out of state who were there, talking about how wonderful they were. And there was one person in the crowd, so all the politicians and VIPs were sort of all in one place, and he was looking at them. And so there was one person in the crowd who is a congressman who didn't get acknowledged. Did you guys see that? You know who it was? It was that creepy traitor McCain 2.0, Dan Crenshaw. He just completely dissed him, totally left him out of all of the acknowledgments. That right there that speaks volumes. He didn't have to say a word. Dan Crenshaw knows that's it. His days are numbered. He will not get an endorsement from President Trump to run again. So if there's anybody down in Texas that wants to primary little Dan, this is your chance. Because if you're America First and you have a good platform, this is your chance. Although I think today is the last day to vote to register for primaries in Texas. But the Congress, that seat is up for reelection every 2 years. So start planning. Primary Dan Crenshaw for 2024 and get the President Trump endorsement. Delia says there's people already running to do that. Who's primarying him? I haven't seen it. Who's trying to primary Dan Crenshaw? I may be behind on this. Yeah, Dan Crenshaw is one of the World Economic Forum guys. Dan McCrenshaw. That's so funny. Yeah, McCain 2.0. I mean, ugh. Okay, speaking of primaries, this is one of the ways that we need to get involved. I am going to register in Virginia to be a delegate. We have a convention here in Virginia we don't have a primary, we have a convention, and for the Republican Party. And so you don't have to you can't just go and vote in the primary in Virginia as a Republican. The Democrats have a primary. You can and should vote in the Democrat primary, and this is true in any state that you're in. If you're in a state that has open primaries, where if the Democrats have open primaries and you are registered as a Republican or an independent, go and vote in the Democrat primary and vote for the person that the Democrats don't want. That is important that you do that. The other thing to make sure of is that not only that you are registered to vote at your current address, but that you are registered for the party that you want to vote for if your party has, if your state has party restrictions for voting. In some states, you cannot vote outside of your party in a primary. In some states, I think that you cannot vote outside of your party, period. So just be aware of that. Just be aware of that. And the other thing is make sure that you get involved and understand and vote in the primaries, because the primaries are where they've been killing us with rhinos. Nobody has gotten involved in the primaries. Nobody's gotten involved. And so the RNC just puts in whoever. They just put in whoever. And they put in the Dan Crenshaws of the world. And then everybody's like, rah, rah, yay, yay, he's a veteran, let's vote for him. And then all of a sudden you got a rhino up on Capitol Hill who might as well be a Democrat. And that is because he was the candidate that was on the ballot against the Democrat. And so just remember at this point, it's MAGA Nation against rhinos. It's MAGA Nation against the establishment Republican of old. That is really, really important. No, we're not changing parties. We're not starting a new party. We are taking over the Republican Party, and we're doing it by getting out in the primaries, becoming a delegate in your state, if that's the way they do it, and becoming and voting in the primaries for both parties, if that is an option in your state. So you need to find out. If you are, like I said, if your state restricts you, if you have to be a Republican to vote in the Republican primary, make sure that you get your registration in order before the deadline. In Texas, it's today. If you want to vote in the Republican primary in Texas, it's today. So just wanted to give you that heads up. That's a big thing that people are doing, that the president is encouraging. Now, why? Are you guys good if I go on a little bit longer? Because there's so much I haven't even touched on. I'm talking about the election now, and I want to touch on something that the president said. Are we good? Can I keep going? Water break. Okay. Yes. Okay. All right. Now Barley's upstairs trying to get in. Okay. All right. Here's the thing. How many of you guys felt your heart sink the other day when President Trump said that we we're going to take back the White House in 2024? How many of you guys, thank you, Delia. We might go over our word limit today. How many of you guys felt your heart sink and you were like, really? Really? So here's the deal. If you're President Trump and you have and you know maybe that devolution is in play because you're part of that. If you don't know about devolution, you need to go to Substack or Telegram and look up Patel Patriot, Patel Patriot, 2 words. You need to go look that up and read about devolution. I can't explain it right now. But if you're President Trump and you know that that's in play and that there's a very good chance that something will be triggered after the midterms, I thought that it was going to be sooner that he would be back, but I think we have to wait for midterms, and here's why I think that. Okay, you're President Trump. You know that something's going to happen. You know that you've been asked like 100 times, are you running in 2024? Now, he still has never said, I'm running in 2024. All he has said to any question in any interview is, I think you're going to be very happy. I think you're going to be very happy. You're going to be very, very happy. So he said that, and everybody's like, yay, he's coming back. And then we're like, still hasn't come back. It's 2022. He's still not back. And so, I don't know about you, but me, I've kind of been thinking, like, we're going to lose our country before then. So he comes out and he says, look, you have to vote like your life depends on it in 2022 midterms. You have to turn out in such large numbers that you break their cheating machine like never before, because they can only cheat so much. And that's what happened in 2020, is that we broke their algorithm so bad that they had to shut everything down. At the same time, somebody made the call and said, shut it down, whatever you have to do. And then they pulled ballots out of suitcases to pad the vote. They were printing ballots off madly at 2 a.m. They were trucking in ballots in Pennsylvania. So why did they have to do that? Because we know that Brandon did not get 60 million votes, much less 81 million. Okay. And so just mathematically, we have to flood the zone. Why do we have to do that? Because we have to maintain the House. We have to take back the House. We have to take back the Senate. And we have to take back eventually the White House. Now, think about this. What is going to happen in 2023 as soon as the new Congress is sworn in, as soon as the new Senate is sworn in? It starts with an I, and they did it twice to President Trump. It was all fake, but they did it anyway. It's called impeachment. He's basically promising you that Brandon will not get off so easy, because we are going to have control of all of it, and he's going to be impeached. I don't know. Let's just pick something. Let's pick the southern border. Let's pick Ukraine. Let's pick his business dealings with China. Let's pick his call with the president of Ukraine. I don't know. Just pick one and then start an impeachment. So that is a big deal. Now, does it mean that they're going to impeach him and then he will get voted out, that the impeachment he'll be convicted by the Senate and then he'll have to leave and President Trump will take over? That's not how it works. But my point is that I do think that will set the stage for what's next. And I also think that any logical person knows that President Trump can't come out and say, hey guys, listen, don't worry about it. I'm going to walk back into the White House before 2024. Because if you're a normie, or if you're deep state, or a rhino, or a leftist, when you hear that, you hear coup, you hear insurrection, right? You think that he's gonna mount a coup, because they've already talked about that. And so there's no way that he's going to come out and say, guys, listen, go read up on devolution and make sure you understand how that works, and make sure you understand that there's a lot more going on here than meets the eye. Everybody is listening to him. Okay. The deep state is listening to President Trump. They're listening to him. They're watching his every move. They know that he knows. They know that he won. And so, they continually want to take him out. Now somebody mentioned Kamala. What's to say that Kamala can't be impeached as well? He also said we're going to end Nancy Pelosi's career. So that means that, when we take back the House, Nancy will not be the Speaker of the House. And let's pray to God that it's not going to be Kevin McCarthy. Good Lord. I mean, okay, don't get me started. But the point is that that President Trump has to, we have to fix 2020. We have to win 2022. Don't listen to anybody who tells you not to vote in 2022. If you decided not to vote, then you might as well move to China or Venezuela, because you're giving our country to the communists, and it's only a matter of time before we're completely that. So I want you to think about something. A president can serve for 10 years total. All right. And so he's telling us that we're taking back the White House in 2024. That means, in my opinion, that whatever happened in 2020 is going to be fixed. I don't think it's going to take that long. I think that 2022 is on the way to fixing that. I'm not going to go into detail about how that's happening right now, but there are some pretty good victories that are happening on the legal front and in the courts. Pennsylvania is an example. A judge came out and said all those mail-in ballots are unconstitutional. That means that if they're unconstitutional in Pennsylvania, they're unconstitutional in the whole country. And President Trump put out a statement about that. So there are things that are being fixed. But remember that fixing 2020 isn't just, it's not like taking your car to the mechanic and going, okay, what's wrong? Oh, good, oil change. That's it. Let's do it. Great. How much do I owe you? That's not how we're fixing 2020. Fixing 2020 is a multi-layered approach, and it's happening on many fronts. So just keep that in mind. We can multitask. We can work on fixing 2020, and by that I mean two things: fixing the things that allowed 2020 to happen, all right, changing those things so it doesn't happen again, but also restoring our rightful president to his place. Okay, so legally, um, he can only serve for 10 years. So think about this. If he was president for 4 years, now I personally think they owe him those 4 years, so he should get those back. I think he should reclaim his time. But legally, I don't think you can do that. But if he served 4 years and then we took 2 years to win back the House and the Senate, and then let's say that he did come back in 2023. Then you've got 2 years, and then you've got a re-election in 2024. That adds up to 10. So 4 years, 2 years, another 10 years. It's just something to think about. I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm not telling you that I know anything, that I have any inside information, but I'm just sort of like reading the tea leaves and just sort of saying, now that I see what's happened and I hear him and I see what he's doing now, he's setting the stage for the next phase. Because remember, guys, this really isn't about, it's not just about another 4-year election. And we've been told that over and over and over. This is not just another 4-year election. And we thought that, a landslide victory in 2020 was going to be like done and dusted. Everything's fixed. Let's just go back to living our lives. And, thank God we saved our country from those horrible communists. That would be so beautiful if that happened. But turns out it was we, the people, that have to save our country from the horrible communist and Marxist takeover. And we do that by getting involved at the local level and actually getting into the systems and the mountains that have been infiltrated. And so, because we have to make sure that this never happens again. I think that I'm preaching to the choir here, but the reason that I'm going into such detail about this today is because I think that as new information comes out, as I watch President Trump now, as opposed to 6 months ago, his entire speech has changed. His posture has changed. Not that he hasn't always been a fighter. There's a little more finesse. There's a little more polish. There is a little more, there's a very targeted message to what we're going to do in 2022. So you're going to continue hearing him say that, and you're going to continue hearing him say 2024. And I don't want you to panic, because it doesn't mean that nothing is going to get done before 2024. Do you guys understand that? I want you to take heart, because I feel like the tables are turning, the tide is turning. We're in a watershed moment where our country is being taken back, but we're the ones who are doing it. And it's just like I was saying with what Jesus was saying to the disciples: You guys are the ones that are going out and making disciples. Okay? That's your job. You're not just sitting here on your hands eating fishes and loaves and going, "Woohoo, Jesus here, he's gonna fix everything." You know? That's not how it works, okay? I mean, even the fishes and loaves, like, they had to hand out the food, right? They had to have the faith to hand out the food. And so that's just a critical piece that's been missing for so long, because Christians have literally just separated themselves from the world. And that's a criminal. That's criminal. It's a crime that people have done that. And so I'm encouraged by what I see. Are you going to hear things from President Trump that are going to give you pause? Yeah, you are. So don't get discouraged, because remember, when he goes up, when he does a speech, I want you to remember something. Think about this. He was out there in Texas and 150,000 people came. Do you think that perhaps some of those 150,000 used to be Democrats and they voted for Brandon? What do you think? Do you think that the next state that he comes to, there will be people in the audience who are hearing him give a speech for the first time? Now, those of you who have listened to him for a long time, you may be sitting there and saying, "Why does he say the same thing over and over again?" Well, first of all, it's not just for you. It's not all about you. Don't act like a Democrat. It's not all about you. It's about we, the people. And he has to say the same things over and over again because he's teaching new people every single time. There's new people coming every time. They don't know these things. They don't know about the traitors in the government. There's so many topics that some of us have been immersed in for so long that we just think, oh, he's talking about that again, right? Oh, he's talking about that again. Oh, yeah, knew that, been there, done that, old news. The new people have no idea. They don't know how all of this works. And so this is for them. They've never been around his magnetism. They've never been around, that dragon energy. And so, the way that he's doing things and his showmanship and his rhetoric, it's for all of the people to learn and to understand what's going on. It's also, just remember that a lot of his messaging is for his enemies. Just remember that he's sending very strong messages to the haters as well, and including the mainstream media. Now he points them out. He points them out every time he does a rally. Did you notice that? He points to them because what he's doing is he's putting them on notice every time. He's saying, "I see you. This is your chance. You got to come clean or not. It's up to you. But I see you. I know what you're doing. You know what you're doing. Every single time you show up here, you have a chance to listen to the truth. It's up to you." Okay? So just remember that. About 10% of what he says, maybe 20%, is for those of us who have been in it for the long haul. Okay? He's not giving the speech for you. If you're a regular, it's sort of like church, right? If you go to church and, you're a very strong Christian, you're actually there to serve. You're not there to be served. You're not there to get spoon-fed milk. You're there to eat meat so that you can be stronger to help the others and to do what? To disciple others. So if you're a seasoned Trump supporter and you love him and you're committed and you're going to vote for him no matter what, stop complaining about the rallies. Don't complain if he says the same thing over and over again. Same thing if he does media interviews. He's going to say the same thing over and over again because there's always a new set of ears that need to hear it. Okay? There are people out there who haven't been paying attention. And if you don't believe me, think about Joe Rogan. I'm seeing people every single day who are saying, "Well, I never knew who, I never knew even who Joe Rogan was. I never listened to him, and so now I'm downloading Spotify and I'm listening to him." It's the same thing with President Trump. Um, Same thing. It is a it's an awakening, and it's an education for people who haven't been in the know. People have been brainwashed. They have believed the lies. And so this is really, really important that people understand this, because you have to take you have to take the mature stance, which is, thank God I know as much as I do. I'm mature. I'm not being blown by the wind. I can handle it. If Trump says things that I don't quite understand, I'm going to pray for discernment on this. I'm not going to let this get me down in the dumps, because I mean, we know that we can't wait. Our country can't wait till 2024. We have to take back this country, and it has to be done for good. We have to get real people in in government. We have to get team freedom in positions of power. And I was thinking about this. I was like, I would rather have those truckers in Congress than half the people that are there any time of day. And that's what we need. This government is for the people, by the people, for the people. And that is what President Trump has been saying all along. He said it in his inauguration speech. We're putting the power back into the hands of the people. And so, you can be a complainer on the sidelines, or you can be a willing participant. All right. And that is what he's telling you right now. And so when he's standing there and saying it's time to get to work, he's talking to you. He's talking to those of you who've been in for a while. He's also talking to the new people, especially the people that are coming over from the Democrat side. All right. um so I think that's all I'm going to say today. It's a big show, a lot to talk about. I've got tons of notes here of things that I didn't talk about. But I think that you have a pretty good idea of how to go into the week, how to really go into February, into the rest of the year. So we've got like 9 months to get dialed in and to make sure that we win these races in the midterms. In the meantime, you've got primaries, and your state has deadlines for registering to vote so that you can be voting in the primary. Make sure that you do not miss that. All right. Make sure that you understand who's running for school board. You might have to be that person that runs for school board because there may be an open seat coming. By the way, there's a seat that's up for grabs in Alexandria, Virginia, in District 8. I think they don't even have a Republican candidate. The Democrat incumbent is just going to walk away with that race, doesn't even have to campaign. Think about that. So if you know somebody in that district that could run for Congress, give them a call. All right. Okay, I want to read these. I want to read your comments. Now, here's the thing: even if you know what Trump is going to say in the rally, he's really funny. I mean, it's very entertaining. Uh, yeah. Um, Yeah. Oh, one thing too about the rallies, Millie brings up an important point here. It shows that Trump hasn't lost any of his base. And I want you to be really wary of any so called conservatives who are out there saying, oh, that's it. Trump is done. And I've seen this, and I've warned you about it, right? There's people out there that were never Trumpers to start with. They jumped on the Trump bandwagon because it was good for their brand. And now they're right back to, that's it. Trump is done. Guys, 150,000 people drove out basically to like the middle of a field in Texas to see a guy who's a civilian, basically, in their minds, right? He's just a guy. And they're out there 24 hours ahead of time. And you want to tell me he's losing his base. What exactly does that look like? Because if this is losing the base, then what does it look like to be popular? That's my question. Okay. Um, that would be the question. If anybody tells you Trump is losing his base, I would ask them that question. Well, if 150,000 people camping out 24 hours ahead of time to see you, um, when you're not even running for office, if that's losing your base, if that's what losing your base looks like, what does popularity look like? Because maybe I don't understand the dictionary, but maybe you could educate me on that. All right. Or maybe Mr. 81 million votes. I live in my basement and I eat ice cream when the country is about to go to war could explain that. Because these two eyes tell me that that guy is popular and he is gaining support, not losing it. I don't know. Okay. I think that's it. Guys, I will be back on Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. And I hope that you guys have a wonderful afternoon. Write to me, info@marygracemedia.com. Um, and let me know your thoughts. It's better if you leave a comment here because I'll get to it quicker. If you're coming back for the replay, please follow the channel. Please like the show. And um, please leave a comment and let me know your thoughts here. All right, I'm going to read your comments before I go here. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you on Wednesday. Take care.